Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Opulence Abundance University of Emotional Intelligence. So glad you are with me today. Okay, we're able to go live. Yeah, thank you for being here. Just to start off, my name is Opulence Abundance. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a speaker, a facilitator, and a healing professional. Oh my gosh. Hi, Carolyn. It's so good to see you. If you are joining me live, please bless me with an emoji. And if you're catching the replay, let me know. But yeah, I work primarily in training people about communication, creating conditions for generative conflict. I mediate conflicts both for individuals and organizations. And I love sharing my story and my journey. So that's a little bit about me. Today, we're going to talk about doing less because sometimes we feel tempted to do the most. And in doing so, we can actually create we kind of can create our own problems, and sometimes creating crisis, doing the most, it's actually a strategy of avoidance, right? There's feelings or things we're having difficulty processing, um and so we end up just really doing a lot to distract ourselves. Oh, yes. So happy you're here with me, Carolyn. And yeah, I'm glad you're on board to doing less. And so to set the vibe, guys, we're really going to just mindfully do the least and just take 3 breaths together. Thank you for breathing with me. You know, what I love about breath is that, like, I take those 3 breaths at the start of every meeting. And I love that it's a grounding, but you don't have to do that much for it. It's literally like, let's just take these breaths. Everyone take them at their own pace. I'm not facilitating an inhale and exhale. We're just breathing. But it really shifts the energy and it really creates a lot of intention. But more than one person has told me that taking those slow breaths kind of scared them, made them uncomfortable. And it makes sense because we are in a real go, go, go culture, and it's possible to live our whole lives without a moment of presence or silence. Wow, I see our mutual aid homies are in the chat. Welcome. Drop an emoji or say hello if you want. Anyway, so we took some breaths, and I'm just going to invite in a practice. If you're able, we're just going to put one hand on the front of our head and one hand on the back of our neck. And just take a breath here. And then you can move one hand to the heart. Keep one hand on the back of the neck. And then moving that hand that's on the back of the neck to the stomach. And then we're just going to finish off this movement by placing the hand that's on the heart again on the back of the neck. So these are just some self holds. I find them very nourishing. And they can be a way just to create a little intimacy and comfort with yourself as you move through the world. All these ways that we can find our feet, stabilize just by doing the least. So, if this is your first time joining, I do a little reading at the start of each live. And today I actually wanted to read Poetry is Not a Luxury by Audre Lorde. I don't know. I know that we've all seen that quote go around, but the actual work is really powerful. It is on the longer side, so I hope you can stick with me. Okay, Poetry is Not a Luxury, 1985, Audre Lorde. The quality of light by which we scrutinize our lives has direct bearing upon the product which we live and upon the changes which we hope to bring about through those lives. It is within this light that we form those ideas by which we pursue our magic and make it realized. This is poetry as illumination. For it is through poetry that we give name to those ideas, which are, until the poem, nameless and formless, about to be birthed, but already felt. The distillation of experience from which true poetry springs births, thought as dream births, concept as a feeling births idea, as knowledge births or precedes understanding. As we learn to bear the intimacy of scrutiny and to flourish within it, as we learn to use the products of that scrutiny for power within our living, those fears which rule our lives and form our silence begin to lose control over us. For each of us as women, there is a dark place within where hidden and growing our true spirit rises. Beautiful and tough as chestnut stanchions against our nightmare of weakness and of impotence. These places of possibility within ourselves are dark because they are ancient and hidden. They have survived and grown strong through darkness. Within these deep places, each one of us holds an incredible reserve of creativity and power, of unexamined and unrecorded emotion and feeling. The women's place of power within each of us is neither white nor surface. It is dark, it is ancient, it is deep. When we view living in the European mode only as a problem to be solved, we then rely solely upon our ideas to make us free. For those were what the white fathers told us were precious. When we, but as we become more in touch with our own ancient, Black, non European view of living as a situation to be experienced and interacted with, we learn more and more to cherish our feelings and to respect those hidden sources of power from where true knowledge and therefore lasting action comes. At this point in time, I believe that women carry within ourselves the possibility for fusion of those two approaches as keystone for survival. And we come closest to this combination in our poetry. I speak here of poetry as the revelation or distillation of experience, not the sterile wordplay that too often the white fathers distorted the word poetry to mean in order to cover their desperate wish for imagination with insight. For women, then poetry is not a luxury. It is a vital necessity of our existence. It forms the quality of light within which we predicate our hopes and dreams toward survival and change, first made into language, then into idea, then into more tangible action. Poetry is the way we help give name to the nameless so it can be thought. The farthest external horizons of our hope and fear are cobbled by our poems, carved from the rock experiences of our daily life. As they become known and accepted to ourselves, our feelings and honest exploration of them become sanctuaries and fortresses and spawning grounds for the most radical and daring of ideas. The house of difference so necessary to change, and the conceptualizations of any meaningful action. Right now, I could name at least 10 ideas I would have once found intolerable or incomprehensible or frightening, except as they came after dreams and poems. This is not idle fantasy, but the true meaning of "it feels right to me." We can train ourselves to respect our feelings and to discipline, transpose them into language that matches those feelings so they can be shared. And where that language does not yet exist, it is our poetry which helps us to fashion it. Poetry is not a dream or a vision, it is the skeleton architecture of our lives. Possibility is neither forever nor instant. It is also not easy to sustain belief in its efficacy. We can sometimes work long and hard to establish one beachhead of real resistance to the deaths we are expected to live, only to have that beachhead assaulted or threatened by canards we have been socialized to fear, or by the withdrawal of those approvals that we have been warned to seek for safety. We see ourselves diminished or softened by the falsely benign accusations of childishness, of non universality, of self centeredness, of sensuality. And who asks the question, am I altering your aura, your ideas, your dreams? Or am I merely moving you to temporary and reactive action? Even the latter is no mean task, but one that must be rather seen within the context of a true alteration of the texture of our lives. The white fathers told us, I think, therefore I am. And the black mothers in each of us, the poet whispers in our dream, I feel, therefore I can free. Therefore I can be free. Poetry coins the language to express and charter this revolutionary awareness and demand the implementation of that freedom. However, experience that has taught us that the action in the now is also always necessary. Our children cannot dream unless they live. They cannot live unless they are nourished. And who else will feed them the real food without which their dreams will be no different from ours? Sometimes we drug ourselves with the dream of new ideas. The head will save us. The brain alone will set us free. But there are no new ideas still waiting in the wings to save us as women, as human. There are only old and forgotten ones. New combinations, extrapolations, and recognitions from within ourselves, along with renewed courage to try them out. And we must constantly encourage ourselves and each other to attempt the heretical actions our dreams imply and some of our old ideas disparage. In the forefront of our move towards change, there is only our poetry to hint at possibility made real. Our poems formulate the implications of ourselves, what we feel within and dare make real, or bring action into accordance with our fears, our hopes, our most cherished terrors. For within structures defined by profit, by linear power, by institutional dehumanization, our feelings were not meant to survive. Kept around as unavoidable adjuncts or pleasant pastimes, feelings were meant to kneel to thought as we were meant to kneel to men. But women have survived as poets, and there are no new pains. We have felt them already. We have hidden the fact in the same place where we have hidden our power. They lie in our dreams, and it is our dreams that point the way to freedom. They are made realizable through our poems that give us the strength and courage to see, to feel, to speak, and to dare. If what we need to dream to move our spirits deeply and directly towards and through promise is a luxury, then we have given up the core, the fountain of our power, our womanness. We have given up the future of our world. For there are no new ideas, there are only new ways of making them felt, of examining what our ideas really mean, feel like, on Sunday morning at 7 a.m., after brunch, during wild love, making war, giving birth, while we suffer the old longings, battle the old warnings, and fear of being silent, impotent, and alone, while tasting our new possibilities and strengths. That was Poetry is Not a Luxury by Audre Lorde. Thank you all for hanging on during that reading. Let's just take a breath. Like, so powerful to witness. Definitely let me know if you're able, like, what stuck out to you or what ideas you're coming away with. What I am really taking in that second reading, a couple things. One, sometimes revisiting these texts, these are transformational texts. Reading them changes us, and we don't have to do too much. Sometimes reading and reconnecting with legacies of existence can nourish and guide us. And in this time where we're witnessing a genocide through our phones, I constantly feel that I'm not doing enough. When I connect and I try to remember, like, the ancestors predicted this, they were thinking of us, there's resources for us. Welcome, Crystalline. So glad you're here. But yeah, there's resources for us. So being able to turn to Poetry is Not a Luxury by Audre Lorde. Like, what a gift. And what I'm really taking from this text is that we are so grounded in thought. We have this idea that ideas will save us, that if we can just think through the problem and do more and more, that is what saves us. But what Audre Lorde is asserting is that actually, if we take a breath and feel our bodies, turn towards interiority, and make the time to guide a feeling into thought, into idea, that is what transforms us. And Audre Lorde also acknowledges that, like, we can't just immerse ourselves in the fantasy. Like, we have to accompany thought and dream and feeling with action. And that we need action because our children need literal food. And so, of course, we need the real life food, but we also need to feed our dreams. And the way we feed our dreams is by feeling. And so, I again am just going to invite in, like, an embodied practice. This one is so simple, and it is something I learned in my MDR training. And it's literally just moving our hands back and forth and just feeling the sensation of our hands. I think it is the tie between the body and the mind is so profound. And it's also one of the first sites of fracture. That, like, when we encounter unsafety as children, maybe even as adults, but if we as children encounter unsafety and we have to live in that unsafety, the body disconnects from the mind. And that's a survival mechanism that in adulthood can easily turn into dissociation, right? So feeling is sometimes harder than it sounds. And I think that starting just by these practices, like feeling our hands rubbing together, and then this practice expands to, like, pushing the hands across the forehead, and then pushing the hands across the cheeks, and, like, letting ourselves feel the sensations of touching our body. It can be really hard to get there, though. And a big reason for that is that sitting still, engaging in self massage, that can just feel so foreign. It can feel so far away, especially if we are, like, just trying to get the laundry done, trying to make money, trying to eat, like, do all the things, and everything feels like it's on hyperspeed. So, again, if we are on hyperspeed, it might not be achievable, right, to slow down instantly. But one thing we can always do is to take a breath and pause in the hyperspeed. Wow, I've just been reading Audre Lorde. I've been touching my face. I'm actually feeling really, really grounded right now. But I am someone that has lived a lot of my life in hyperspeed. And I will never forget what it was like for me and the feelings of grief and sadness I felt one day where I had just been running all day. And I looked around and it felt like my space was still in chaos and I was tired. And it just felt like I still had so much to do. And I didn't have time to like sit and enjoy or like have a cup of tea. Like that felt impossible because of the level of urgency I was enduring. And when I look back on that former self, and if you have a memory of yourself, maybe like you present day or like yesterday, I don't know, like it's still, I still get sucked into the hyper speed. You know, if you read the newsletter, which by the way, newsletter, link in bio, please subscribe. You know that I'm like lost in the sauce, right? I've been writing about just feeling extremely tired. And my tiredness is my own making. Like I am the one, I work for myself. So I'm the one saying, I'm going to go live twice a week. I'm going to send out a newsletter twice a week, right? So I'm tired. And so I can think of my former self 5 years ago. I can think of myself a week ago. But I just want to offer myself some loving eyes, right? And if that love and self compassion of like, oh my gosh, you are just a person in the world trying. Um, and there's so much pressure on your plate and there's not a lot of support. If I turn to my former self and I just see judgment or disgust, then even I can invite in an elder, like maybe, you know, a Buddhist monk from a monastery who is very loving. Maybe you can invite in my loving eyes. I have compassion for you, right? But just to look at our former self with a lot of love, to understand that the hustle we engage in the real world can be so overwhelming that it tears us apart from our feeling self. But what we feel, what remains, might be a sense of like being chased, of feeling a constructed urgency. And there's a way where that urgency might correlate to our real life, right? So maybe I think using myself as an example again, I know that moving from Los Angeles to Atlanta was a way where I was able to like it was a long intervention to say like, wow, I think I'm living outside of my capacity. We talk about living beyond our means in a monetary sense. But to quote Miriam Husna, energy is currency, right? And so sometimes it's living beyond our financial means, but sometimes we're living beyond our energetic capacity. And sometimes the intervention to shift that, it's a long game, right? So for me, moving from Los Angeles to a small, I don't know if Atlanta's a smaller city, but to somewhere more affordable, that took out a lot of the stress and pressure of my life. But getting there took a long time. And so, what do we do in that interim? And I think in the interim, for me, having a lot of patience and self compassion. So often, when we turn towards ourselves, we can turn towards ourselves with a really violent or abusive voice that's like, you're not doing enough. You're never doing enough. And that voice can push us deeper into urgency. So if this is happening, right? Like we're always busy, we're always tired, our inner voice is unkind. I do think the first way to kind of step out of that is a deep breath. Let's just take one. Also, welcome another viewer I see. If we are in almost like a prison of our own making, that like the self-loathing is deep, our life is chaotic, the deep breath and then acknowledging like, I'm not going to be able to do everything. There might be a million things on my list, and my expectation is that I do a million things today. But what is actually realistic for me? And what is actually truly important in the grand scheme of my life, right? So if I have kids, maybe the house is going to be messy. Maybe we're going to eat frozen vegetables, or there might be some other negotiation, but we are going to spend time together. So that's like, there's all these living negotiations that we're making. And a lot of times it's about that release from expectations. And I think that question of like, what is it that I expect of myself? Who is that for? Is it realistic? I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I often tell them that, like, your A plus work, what you're striving to create, that's delusion. It's delusional and it's unnecessary. Your B plus work, your solid C work, that's everyone's A plus work. And it really comes down to like who is in your head setting those expectations. Is that a parent? Is that not even a parent, but a memory of a parent saying you're not good enough? And the more we can like almost pull out those expectations and like give them, like imagining their own visual representation, giving them a chair in the room, the more we can better understand what is actually truly important for our own lives. And we can also, I'm acting like this is so easy, but once we get past the shame that we might feel, um, once we can do that, we're truly able to get into strategy and to be more realistic with our lives. So, an example of that is like, well, I also want to name, if you do have someone like an inner voice setting really high expectations for you, I really think managing your own expectations for yourself, taking time to be like, what is my expectation of today? And really asking yourself, what actually has to get done today? You know, the more we can lean into that strategy, the more we are able to, the more we are actually able to make our lives more sustainable. And it's a tricky approach because you're like within it and you kind of have to sort of transform, and the transformation is going to happen slowly. And so, in the interim of transforming our lives into us not being exhausted and tired all the time, we're going to be in the discomfort of feeling the expectation, but not giving into that urgency, that inner voice of urgency. I want to name that if you can identify your inner urgent voice, and you can even feel it in the body, like what does that voice feel like in the body? Is it in the pit of the stomach? Is it a heartbeat? Does it feel like too much coffee? Um, we can also kind of give a visual representation of that voice, imagine them sitting across from us, and then also inviting them to rest. How does this inner urgent voice, what would it look like to find a comfortable compartment for them to live in? So, if you are someone who identifies with this, and I know it's part of the ADHD tunnel because it's like procrastination, immobilization, disassociation, and then suddenly we're aware and we have laundry and we want to meal prep, we want to do all these things. And I think it's especially dangerous in this social media world. One of my energy teachers, I'm not necessarily someone who uses the chakra system publicly often, but I do think it's helpful to understand that, like, in this upper, where our mind is, the chakra associated with the mind, we are taking in so much information about other people's lives through Instagram and social media. It's so easy for those images, not even thoughts or ideas, but images of how other people are living to get stuck in our mind and for that to be internalized into an expectation. And I think what's really tricky about that is those images aren't accurate. So we're all out here kind of like gaslighting, stressing each other out with things that aren't even necessarily reality, right? Like, I think something that someone was naming to me is like so many people are getting plastic surgery, including the Kardashians. And certain Kardashians are getting plastic surgery to like look like their sibling or to like look like a face-tuned version of themselves. And this brings me back to this quote that's like, the sick mind will continue into infinity. A Buddhist teacher told me that once, and I was like, dang, call me out, right? Call me out. And so the sick, like, so there's a way where we can have an image in our head of perfection and be caught up in constantly trying to achieve that and then be in a cycle of constantly falling short. And that's painful. That's emotionally painful. So I just want to take a breath and just celebrate you all for listening, for having the desire to shift, because I think the desire in itself is wise and healing. And the more we can recognize and bring awareness to like this image in my head, it might not be as important as I think it is. It might not be as accurate as I think it is. Like, really being able to have that insight to challenge our own expectations and ultimately to release ourselves from them, to say like, okay, if I don't have to meal prep every Sunday, or like I don't have to have a perfect Instagrammable life, what can my life look like? And I know you're saying like opulence, that's cute and all, but like I actually am overwhelmed with real life tasks. And it's like, no, homie, I believe you. I was a hoarder. Like I was a hoarder. I lived in dysfunction, and now that's not my life. And now I actually do meal prep. Like check out the newsletter for that strawberry sauce recipe. I think the difference is though that like one, you have to rest. The rest builds capacity. Rest is like when your body, like literal sleep, okay, sleep. That's when your body actually renews itself. And like I'm someone with a skin condition. I don't know if you all can see it. Sorry, that maybe was gross or inappropriate. But I have a skin condition because I didn't rest enough, right? And my body, my skin condition reflects how much I'm resting to me. Um, and the thing about it is like we can get very poor quality sleep and it's not good rest. So really prioritizing, understanding like if all you do today is sleep, that is okay. But I've definitely been in that situation where it's like, oh, I did nothing all day. I didn't rest, nor was I productive. I was just in this weird state of discomfort. And I think what can happen there is when we're so activated that we don't actually know how to, we're just so activated. We're living in this activation. We want to rest, but when we rest, we feel that urgency. And then when we're in the urgency, we're kind of too overwhelmed to actually do something. This is feeling like a familiar state of mind. Um, that's so normal. And like, again, just taking a breath to honor that feeling and to honor any grief that comes up with that recognition. I'm so glad that that is a helpful reminder, Crystal, and that rest builds capacity. It really does. Sometimes, like resting, but being not beyond rest, like regulating, which can just happen by these three mindful breaths. Like, you don't have to do a meditation or go to a yoga class. Like, I think if you just say, I'm going to take an intentional pause, step out of the chaos, step out of the cycle, just take a pause and take some deep breaths. I've been speaking to very like close to home circumstances. Like you're trying to clean your room, it's just not working out, right? And then you find yourself cleaning until like 3 a.m., but you're not really cleaning. And all of that is so real. I do want to make a little time just to pull back into the bigger picture and to talk about things like how, when we're in a constant state of activation, it can push us towards impulsive decision making with low judgment, which can be everything from being like, I'm going to move or I'm going to go on this road trip. You know, I've shared before that my activation behavior is when I'm activated, I drive, I take cross country trips. When I'm in a constant state of activation, just the cost of the gas really takes me out. So just acknowledging like there are all these behaviors that we just might do and forget that might be adding to the larger stress of our life. And if we can build this habit of catching ourselves. So, going back to the example of trying to clean the room, something that has really helped me, a tangible tip here, is to say, like, I'm going to clean for maybe 2 hours and I'm going to set maybe a timer for my halfway mark for at an hour. And at an hour, when I hear that timer going off, I'm just going to stop. I'm going to sit on my bed, take a deep breath, and just assess what I've done. Understand that maybe I have an hour or 30 minutes left and see what I can do to tie things up so I'm in a functional place. You know, and that shift in thinking, shifting from like, I have to do this all at once and I'm not able to succeed because I'm a failure, shifting from thinking like I'm the failure to being like, oh, I need a different strategy to make this more sustainable has changed my life. And I think it is, again, the turn towards the pause, the turn towards self compassion, that can transform our lives. And actually, there's this, I'm going to send this out in the newsletter, the one on Friday. So keep an eye out for it. There is this mantra I love called Om Mani Padme Hum, right? And it means like, may I, the grand creator, that is me, like I am a creator, may I create a life where I am transformed by love and kindness into a jewel lotus of love and kindness. And so I guess what I'm saying here is the same way like Audre Lorde is like, we are not our thoughts, we are also our body, that we are able to move to freedom by feeling. I'm also saying like, can our North Star not be what we produce, but can it be the love and kindness we can have for ourselves and others? And this is something I want to continue to explore because love and kindness, especially towards ourselves, is not intuitive. But our capacity to treat ourselves with love and kindness determines our capacity to treat others with love and kindness. And I know that can be a hard pill to swallow because we can love our baby, our partner, our friends so much and feel such loathing for ourselves. But ultimately, I think our capacity to cultivate true love for ourselves really allows us to follow the integrity of the love we have for others. Because we will bump up against that capacity, either through projecting our own shadows onto other people. There's a variety of ways it comes out, but we can't run away from our own self-loathing. And that's also why healing work is important. A lot of times underneath loathing, there's a need to heal. There's traumatic events, there's bitterness, there's a deep need for self-forgiveness. That's all very real. And it takes time. But if we can just take that breath, find that pause. And for some of us, even thinking of someone who loved us deeply, whether a grandparent, I don't know. There's so many options here. And being able to pause and feel that feeling of love, that can really, really change our lives. So when we can kind of transcend this idea. And a part of this is, and this is where it gets a little confusing, right? The body might tell us we have to run. Things are urgent. And the mind is saying things are urgent. And I can tell because my body feels this way, right? And so knowing that when we feel that sense of urgency in our body, being able to recognize it, and maybe using a YouTube yoga or Qigong class, doing anything from shaking to whatever, to scanning the environment. These are things we've done on past lives. Using those somatic tools to kind of release that energy, kind of having to say to ourselves, well, I know I feel urgent, but I am safe right now. Even though I feel urgent, I don't have to act on that urgency. These are things we're building capacity towards. So I hope this live was helpful. Doing less is my favorite thing in the world. One thing I often say is like, sometimes you have to go slow to go fast. Sometimes you have to go fast to go slow. Very often people have to go slow to go fast. We have to be patient. We have to be present. We have to be measured. We have to be detailed. We have to be careful. And that's what will allow us to do things with care and actually get where we need to go with efficiency. I think something I see over and over again is like, once I take the pause and I kind of just like release the urgency, release the expectation, and I'm present, I realize that actually I don't need to do as much as I think I do. So I might have an expectation that's like, I have to do all my laundry today. And it's like, actually, maybe I just need to do one special load, like just underwear and what I'm wearing for the week. And then maybe I need to find a storage solution for my remaining laundry so it's out of my way for the week. Um, and I think that's kind of an example of how we can sort of be like, okay, how can I work with this? I think people with ADHD often have a lot of these strategies. One I'm thinking about is like, if it's overwhelming for me to put everything in place or everything doesn't have a place, maybe I do create a doom box. I don't know if you're familiar with the term doom box, but like basically it's a box with a lot of random clutter in it. So it's like, okay, maybe I create two boxes, one with important documents and things that are very important, one with like random clutter that I need to sort out at another time. Maybe I declutter using this two box system. I schedule a time to go through the boxes. That's actually very important. Don't let your dooms hang out. I have, but don't. Anyways, and then it's like, okay, maybe next weekend, that's when I actually go through these things. But right now, this is what creates peace. There's this great book and an influencer who talks about this, which I think is called Keeping House While Drowning. And their TikTok handle is Struggle Care. But I think the biggest takeaway is just like releasing that expectation, understanding even if we feel urgent in the body, we can investigate that feeling and stay present with it, right? And then finally using the some of the somatic techniques like scanning the environment with the eyes to be like, okay, I feel like there's a threat here, feeling the need to fly, what's going on? And then also holding that creating a plan and prioritizing our personal healing is really important. And some of the ways we can prioritize healing, even if we might not have funds for a therapist, are things like reading every day, right? Taking 3 deep breaths when we wake up or before we go to bed. Um, Dancing, going to live music, feeling vibration in our body, laughing with friends, all these things create healing for us. So thank you again all for joining. I hope you are a newsletter reader. The link is in my bio. And I will see you all Friday to continue this discussion and to go deeper into dissociation and how we interrupt patterns of dissociation. I really appreciate you all. Have a great day. Mwah.